You're recognized for your questions.
Thank you. Let me ask a question that I'll need just a brief answer from all four of you on this one. It deals with not only the backlog of cases, but also the delay in getting through the court system. It is exceptionally convenient for attorneys to ask for more time, to be able to show that I'm not ready. It's also exceptionally convenient for judges to say, we'll just reschedule you. It's just not convenient for the people that are trying to get justice and their day in court. It's also expensive for those individuals. So the backlog of cases seems to lead to more and more situations where it's just, we just weren't ready for today, so let's postpone this for a month or 2 months, and it continues to be able to bring one delay or another. My question to each of you is, what are you going to do to be able to manage your courtroom to be able to make sure that you don't have justice delayed in your courtroom and the people that came to get their day in court actually get their day in court? Judge Putragunta, why don't you begin, and then we'll just take it down the road from there.
Thank you, Senator. I have two responses to that. The first is, I think it starts with me as the judge. I try to be as prepared as I possibly can be in my current role at the Rental Housing Commission. I go to court knowing the record, knowing the issues, having done research so that I can get to the heart of a matter quickly and ask the questions that determine the issue. The second, I think, is to work with counsel to set reasonable deadlines and then to have reasonable consequences if those deadlines aren't met. In my experience, having practiced in Superior Court, the judges that have those high expectations tend to have them met.
Judge Sione Lopez?
Yes, I agree with Judge Putragunta. The way that I handle my calendar, I'm very clear at every hearing at the beginning what we are going to be accomplishing on that hearing. And right at the end of the hearing, we talk about what we'll be accomplishing at the next hearing and what needs to happen between the two. I think pre-trial conferences really give you an opportunity to figure out what the issues are and work them out before the trial date. I can tell you that I'm on a calendar right now, an abuse and neglect calendar, and there are statutory requirements for when trials happen within 105 days of removal, and we've been able to meet that challenge. We also have a very dedicated panel of attorneys that are appointed by the court. We have a review panel made out of judges who will yield complaints if an attorney, would usually ask for continuances needlessly, and the committee will address those concerns, and the attorney may no longer be on the panel to be appointed to cases. And so we take it very seriously at the Superior Court, and that has not been my experience. I believe that people are ready. I think I tend to agree with Judge Putragunta that if the judge sets the tone of what has to happen and when, and you are very reasonable in the way that you approach your cases, and parties understand your expectations that the parties will be ready for trial when needs to, or whatever the hearing for the day.
Be helpful. Ms. Calderon.
With respect to the Court of Appeals, I believe that deadlines and requests for extension of time are governed by the court rules, which require a showing of cause. And so if I'm assigned to a motions panel, I'll do my part to make sure we're applying that standard uniformly and consistently. I know from my own practice in the federal courts that if a circuit has a reputation of not freely granting extensions of time, attorneys tend to get started a little earlier on their briefs, and so that will be my approach.
Okay. Judge Staples?
I've experienced requests for continuances, and often they're about late-breaking matters, sometimes in criminal cases. I found that if I discuss the requests with the parties, often we're able to come to a resolution and continue forward in the case consistent with the defendant's constitutional rights. I am on one of the panels that Judge Sione Lopez mentioned regarding the CJA panels committee that decides who is able to pick up cases and who is able to remain on the panel, and an attorney's preparedness is taken into account with respect to that when I work on that committee.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Calderon, let me ask you a question. You're going to deal with issues different than what everyone else is dealing with on this, and you know that full well, and that there's some challenges just during the COVID time period that help us get a good feel on how the law would be handled by anyone. Mayor Bowser issued multiple orders declaring a public health emergency. Some of those resulted in the closure of all non-essential businesses or prohibited gatherings of 10 people or more. there was quite a bit of conversation about how that applies to faith-based entities, churches in particular, and what that looks like. So my question for you is, do you view houses of worship as non-essential businesses that can be prohibited from gathering?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. There were a series of decisions by the Supreme Court last year in the so-called shadow docket. And so if I am confirmed to the Court of Appeals, obviously I will have to follow any decisions by the Supreme Court that are binding on this issue. Whether a law that imposes restrictions, whether it's for a health pandemic or some other reason, whether those apply neutrally or impose a substantial burden on houses of worship, that's a very fact-intensive question. And so I would have to analyze whatever case that came before me in light of the facts of that case and the applicable Supreme Court precedent.
So, but dealing with stay-at-home orders, dealing with all of those things, there were times that there were stay-at-home orders, but there were exceptions on outdoor gatherings for tennis courts, dog parks, farmers market, and such, but outdoor gatherings were limited for churches and gathering. So would you at least agree that if a farmer's market can meet and a dog park can meet in an outdoor gathering, that a church should have no restrictions as well for an outdoor gathering, or at least the same, and make it consistent for all entities?
Yeah, I understand what you're getting at. My concern is that if restrictions were to be reimposed and a question like that were to come to me, I wouldn't want to be seen as having prejudged the situation. And of course, the law in that area is evolving. And so my approach, again, would be to let the facts and the applicable Supreme Court precedent drive the analysis.
Is there a difference in the eyes of the government between a church, a synagogue, and a business, and as far as their meeting and their operation? Should the government look at a church different under the law and how they gather to meet than they do at looking at a business, how they gather to meet?
Well, I believe the Supreme Court has said, obviously, that you cannot single out houses of worship. And so if there is evidence of that sort of discriminatory intent or motive, that is an important factor to take into consideration.
Okay, thank you. I will ask a follow-up question for the record based on our time and the ongoing votes that are happening, but I do have some interest on just the eviction moratorium that's happening. That will be in front of all of you in the days ahead to be able to manage the decisions and how you balance out the law. You have a unique responsibility to be able to balance out the opportunity for individuals who own, and there are quite a few in D.C. that own a single piece of rental property or a condo or something else that suddenly have no income for a year or two and are prohibited from gathering that in D.C., to also the responsibility to be able to help maintain good housing for those other individuals. So that is a difficult legal question, and I will try to submit that for the record for each of you and to be able to follow up on. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lankford. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations to the nominees. Thanks for being here. Ms. Calderon, if I could just come to you and pick up